Hey guys, welcome to tonight's podcast. I'm your host, Mari.
And Adam.
So we are on episode 3 tonight, and we are doing a mystery this time. So I found this really interesting. I know you really haven't
I just
looked
looked
into it too much.
recently when you told me about it, but it's definitely interesting and mysterious circumstances, I'd say the least.
Yeah, I've read about this for a while, off and on. It's just really interesting to me because it's just so weird.
So what is it? Why don't you tell us what the story?
So this is about the Dyatlov Pass incident. So I think a lot of you've heard about this.
A lot of you probably hadn't, like me.
But some of
recently.
You probably haven't. Yeah. I always do. I always read on things like this and watch shows on this kind of stuff. So I mean, I've known about it for a while, but I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. It's definitely unusual.
Before we go too in depth, why don't you give us a quick once over what exactly we're going over here? What is this Dyatlov Pass?
It's the Dyatlov Pass incident, and it's called this because not really what it's called, but it's called this now because of the leader of the group of hikers. It's about a group of hikers that went hiking into the Ural Mountains in, at the time, was Soviet Russia.
So, Soviet
Union, yeah, it's Russia now. But and the leader of the group his last name was Dyatlov. And so that's why.
So these are a bunch of Russian folk.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They were teenagers, actually. They were not teenagers, but they were young. They were like in their early 20s.
College folk.
Yeah, they were actually in school still. And they had taken a break from school, and they were all experienced hikers. They had like a grade level 2 certification for hiking and like ski tours and all that. And so they were actually attempting to get their grade 3 certification at the time. And so they decided to go on this trip to get their grade 3 certification. So
so basically, from what I gather, if I may intervene.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the cliff notes on what we're going to talk about tonight is these people went out on a hike through the mountains.
Yep.
And I guess woods and mountains. Ural Mountains in Russia. And this is in 1959?
Yes, January 1959.
So it's winter, and the winter in Russia is quite harsh. I mean, it wasn't quite Siberia, but it was still in the mountains for one, so you're already up there. It's going to be really cold. So basically, it was a group of 9, right?
It was a group of 9, yes. There were actually supposed to be 10, but on the day they set off to go, one of them became ill. So he ended up staying.
So what happens here? They go up, and their whole goal was to stay there for about 2 weeks or so, right? And then basically, every single one of them gets killed.
Yes.
And no one knows how. They're very mysterious deaths. And we'll go over that here as we really get started. But
yeah,
I saw the pictures, and they're weird. I mean,
yeah, if you definitely look at the pictures, yeah, there's so many mysterious injuries on these people.
They went up there as trying to break a record, right?
Yes.
And then they never came back. They died. No one knows what the hell. I mean, so that's the gist of what's going on here. So let's go ahead and start from when they decided to go on this hike.
So that was on the 23rd, I believe, of January. They got prepared. They got all their materials.
Of 1959, you said?
Yes, January 1959 is when this occurred.
So this is way back in these are definitely in the middle of the Soviet days.
Yeah. And so that's when they started getting prepared. They got, all their stuff ready. They got everything they needed.
So you're telling me this was to break some sort of record, or
so
like a Guinness record or something?
They were trying to get their grade 3 certification, and there were a few like requirements that had to be completed in order to get the certification. So their mile was they were going to try to do at least 190 miles.
190 miles.
Yeah.
Of hiking?
They had to hike over a certain amount because the minimum they could do was 186. And they were trying to do 190. So
that is a ton.
It is.
And not just walking, but hiking.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then a third of it had to be challenging terrain. And they had to do this for at least 16 days. So it was going to be quite a while they were going to be out. And at least 6 nights in a tent, and then 8 nights spent in an uninhabited region. So this was like, not an easy thing to complete.
So there's a variety of stuff they had to get done to meet this.
To meet this requirement.
And I mean, I guess this is just personal goals they all had, or is this some kind of future career they were trying to do?
No, actually, they were going to school for engineering, but this was kind of like not just like something fun for them to do because they loved hiking. They loved, going on adventures like this.
Right,
they were experienced hikers. I mean, they knew what they were doing.
Right.
But this is also a way for them to get that ultimate certification to become masters of
right.
All that. So that's what they were setting out to do.
So it was their trip was supposed to be from, what did you say, January 16th?
They started around like the 24th, 23rd, 24th of January.
And it was supposed to end
and it was supposed to end, I think, like around February, like between the 13th and the 15th, somewhere around there. Like,
so we're looking at a good, 2.5, 3 weeks?
Yeah, it was going to be quite a while.
Wow. And I guess they had to pack food and stuff with them.
They did.
Were they going to attempt to hunt on this mountain?
They didn't specify if they did or not. I'm assuming, they had the ability to.
Right.
But they
and
actually...
This is in the middle of winter, too.
Yeah.
So this is, it's cold.
They actually had said, before they left, they actually had gone to this checkpoint, this stopping point, and they would get everything prepared. They would make sure they had food, they had the medical materials, anything that they thought they would need.
Now, this is the middle of the Soviet days, right? Communist country, which everybody knows. Communist countries, you do what they tell you to do. You're just not really free will.
Right.
So now, did they have to get permission from the government? Or were they just something they went off and did on their own?
The thing about
was this a mission the government sent them on?
The thing about that, from what I read, they actually were encouraged to do that. In the Soviet Union, they encouraged...
See, now that you're telling me they're encouraging them, this opens up a whole other can of worms.
They encouraged science and exploration and for like its youth or whatever, and so like they...
But this also makes me wonder, because remember, all these people died in the end.
Yeah.
Did they encourage them because they wanted them to go out there and see what happens to them because they knew something was up there?
I don't know. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit, huh?
According to them, they liked for their people to, go exploring and do
sure
this and that.
Weird.
So,
that's kind of the opposite of reality of communism, but whatever.
They did not object to them going up there and doing any of that stuff. So,
well, I guess if it wasn't costing them a dime, free exploration, come back and tell me what you found.
That's true. Yeah. And so they set off on this trip, and so they were going to travel, like I said, they were going to cover 190 miles across the North Ural Mountains now some of these names are kind of Russian, so I'm probably going to pronounce these wrong.
Let me take a gander at them. I'm pretty good at the old...
I think it's Otorten. They were going to climb the mountains of Otorten, or toward Otorten. And,
I wonder if that's a town?
There's some right here. Kolat Saikol, I think.
Well, it translated
to Dead Mountain.
Yes.
Which, it's eerie in itself right there. Dead Mountain. I don't think I'd want to go up a mountain that's...
okay, that right there is a warning.
You're right. Yeah, that's like okay. Nope, I don't think so.
So I'm looking at the name, and it looks like it's pronounced Kolat Saikal, which I guess is Dead Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't think I'd even be interested in going up this. It's like going to Japan's Suicide Forest.
Yeah,
to hell with that idea.
But I mean, I guess they, like I said, they were experienced, so they knew what they were doing. So I guess they felt comfortable doing it.
Right. Well, there's some people that have the mindset that, oh, look, I'm such a challenge kind of guy. This place is called Dead Mountain. Well, hell, I'm up for that challenge. Fuck
no,
that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure
but there's a lot of people like that. And that's how you weed them out.
Mm-hmm. So on this trip, there was 8 men and 2 women, all experienced. And they were going on this trip. And so...
And they were all in their 20s, or early 20s, physically fit.
Yes, they were, yeah, they were
so
fit.
There was no slouches, I got you.
Now, mind you, it was really, really cold. It was like, I think, it was like, -2 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I know.
So it was really cold.
In Russia, it's cold in the wintertime, and, especially in the Soviet days, man.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're up in the mountains.
Yeah, so, I mean, they had set off and everything was good. They went up there and they took, I know among the stuff they took were like diaries and cameras.
Now, these are the old school cameras.
Yeah. So, the one that didn't get to go with them.
So there was originally 10, but
there
only
was originally
9
10.
went?
Yeah, only 9 went because one of them he ended up not feeling well or something, and so he ended up not going, which was good for him that he ended up not going. So, he had arranged with the team lead, Dyatlov, to stay in contact with him. That he would eventually like write to him. He would send him a message or something. He would.
But how is that possible? That they have it was like.
I think it's on their way back. Like once they had made their way back, I guess he would let him know. Like I guess when they came back or something. Like they had been an understanding.
Oh, so he went back home, I guess.
Yeah, he ended up going. Yeah, he was back home.
Sick.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so but he was like, he had already prearranged with him. Like on this date, we should be back by this time.
So I'll let you know.
Yeah, we'll be sending you something to let you know.
Mail or carrier pigeon.
Right. But of course that time came and went, and he didn't receive anything.
Yeah.
So then, a little bit more time passed by, and then he was like, well, okay, maybe they're just, staying behind a little bit longer for whatever reason.
Right.
So he didn't think much of it.
And so they were hiking up the mountain, and we got some photos. And, there's snow all over the place. I mean, they had like, they were properly dressed.
Yes, they were.
I mean, for what you can expect from people in 1959 in Soviet Russia.
Right.
And so the Russians, they're used to dealing with the cold, so they know what they're doing. And from what I gather, they got hiking boots and those things that like skiers use. I don't know, to claw into the ground, a hiking stick or something. Yeah, they had quite a bit of stuff. They're documenting basically when they're going up this mountain, because I saw pictures of them. They found some like writing on old trees, like from old indigenous peoples that lived up in the mountains.
Yeah,
I forgot what they were called. It was a tribe, but nonetheless, I'll show a picture of that. And but they knew what they were doing, and so things were going smoothly, I guess, for what, about 6 days? I'd say
about at least 6 days. Yeah, and then
so everything was fine. They're going up this mountain, and you said they had their own food supply and all that with them?
Yeah, they had their supplies. They had medical supplies. They had food. They had, they had one large tent, so they were all going to stay in one large tent.
So 9 people to what, 10? I wonder how big this must have been.
It must have been a good size. Yeah, it was a good sized tent.
Okay, so they have their jackets and their boots and all that kind of crap. How were they actually staying warm at night? Were they starting a fire outside? Something that may have attracted something?
I think they did. They did have fire that they had set at some point, and that was also, I gather that just from the fact that when they ended up going to their where they were found,
the bodies,
they did find what looked like a fire that had been nearby. Right. So yeah,
so they had a campsite.
Yes, they actually did have a campsite, and they had their tent.
So about how many days were they successful before they seemed to have come to their demise?
I would say about a week, maybe.
What do you think? What did it say?
I'd say about a week. It said so they left on the 24th, I'd say 23rd, 24th. And then when their diaries were found, the last entry was the 1st. So
February.
February, yeah.
1959. So they were on foot for a good week almost, about.
That's what I would say.
Before something happened.
Something really weird happened.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if somebody or something had been following them for a while.
It's possible. I mean,
so week goes by, they're traveling, and then something happens. Now, how long before people start realizing something's up?
Well, they were supposed to be back by, I'm thinking maybe like the 13th or 14th. At the latest, I'd say about maybe the 16th.
Yeah.
And
so you're telling me their last diary entry was on the 1st. And the 16th is when they, at the latest, should have been heard back from.
Right, and they never came back.
So over 2 weeks, let's say they got killed all on the 1st. So over 2 weeks had passed before people had even gave it a thought to start looking for them.
Exactly, yeah.
So they're long gone, frozen, and whatever's left of them. And that's something, too, because when they did find the bodies, they were kind of weird, but that kind of makes me think, okay, well, the bodies are out there for 2 weeks. Something could have been eaten on them or whatever. That is true. But at the same time, you said it was -2 degrees on this mountain. what the hell's up there at -2 degrees? Animals don't come out -2. I mean, I guess some do.
I mean, yeah.
But I mean, we've seen videos, and there's not very many creatures up there. They usually hibernating or something, or they come down. They don't stay up there in the mountain. But who knows?
So they didn't. Their friend who had stayed behind, way he
looked out.
He was. Oh yeah, definitely. He noticed something wasn't right, but he figured, okay, then maybe they just stayed later on for whatever reason. But then the 20th came around, and still nothing.
The 20th.
The February 20th came around, and still no
so 20
sign
days
of them. Yeah,
after
nothing.
the last.
Yeah.
But at this point, they hadn't found the diary.
No, because they hadn't even searched for them yet.
Yeah.
He
so
was just
on the February 20th, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has at this point in time. It's been almost a month that they've been gone already. They're 4 days shy of a month, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is definitely. Of course, this is 1959.
So he ends up, he starts saying like, "Hey, they haven't come back yet. What's going on?" And even the families are like, they should have been back by now.
So
they go out with volunteers. Volunteers go up.
Actual, just regular people.
Regular people.
So what about I don't know how it is in the Soviet Union, but reports to the authorities. I mean,
they eventually
these are communists, so they probably don't give two shits. But
they eventually did. They
did they look into it? The authorities.
They did. So
who went first?
They had volunteers go up.
Okay, I'm getting ahead of my. Sorry about that, but let's go. You go ahead.
They had volunteers go up, I guess, with their friend, and they went to go.
This is on the 20th or slightly after.
This was I think it was a little after the 20th.
Okay.
And they found the campsite, but they didn't find any hikers. But they found the campsite, and just the tent alone, they were like, "What happened?" Because when they found the tent, it was destroyed. There was snow all over it, and it had been ripped, and it was ripped from the inside. Like they had torn from the inside to push their way out. Like they didn't even bother to unzip it. They were like in a hurry, and they tore it open.
Well, my thing is this: did they tear it open to get out, or did something tear it open to get in?
All the reports that I read said that it was torn from the inside.
So I guess it just from the way it was cut. I guess depending on, I guess you can look at something and it's cut a certain way. Could tell you if you're enough of an expert, if you examine the threads,
yeah,
or the angle, if it was cut from the inside or outside. I guess that's a possibility how they probably figured that out.
And then what they thought was weird besides that was that all their supplies were still in there. I mean, there was clothes, shoes, food, stuff that they would need.
And the actual door or the actual tent entrance was still completely closed.
Yeah, it was still completely shut.
So that makes me wonder, okay, this tent obviously is not see-through, so they couldn't really see out of it. So they knew something was out there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it makes you, okay, so they knew something was out there, and yet they couldn't see it, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't get in because the door or the tent was still closed, and yet they said the way it was cut was from the inside.
Yep.
So if they were inside the tent and they cut it open to escape, I mean, I don't understand. I'm like, what the hell were they running from? Because
exactly,
it didn't get in. Well, what were they so scared that they'd go out there and risk with it?
Exactly.
I mean, unless it was somehow some sort of creature, phenomenon.
One thing that
mysterious being, demon that could teleport or just float right through it.
Well, one thing that was taken was the camera.
Inside the tent?
Inside the tent.
So they left all their stuff.
Yeah, they left the stuff that they would need.
But they took the camera.
Yeah,
because this guy documented stuff and he has photos. And at the very last photo he took is something
kind of weird.
Kind of like a blurry image. Yeah. Can't really tell. I'm not going to upload that one because it doesn't look like anything. But one image that he does have is what looks like some sort of man or creature off in the distance about, I don't know, 20 yards away from the picture.
Yeah.
That's something we'll discuss in a bit. So, okay, they ripped the...
So the volunteers, that's what they found. And so that was enough for them to be like...
This tent, does it say... I know most modern tents they're completely solid. Mm-hmm. They got the walls, the sides, and the floor.
Right.
So many older days, did they set up a tent and there was actually no floor and they you know what I mean by that? Like they made a tent and then the floor was just the ground. Because that makes me think if the reason they cut the way to get out, something came up out of the ground.
Because I didn't even think about that.
If this tent holds 9 people, it's got to be good size. Maybe this is a big old.
It's good size.
Maybe this is like a 20-foot tent, and the ground is the bottom of the tent. There's not an actual floor.
Right.
So they're sleeping on sleeping bags or whatever.
Right.
Which I don't think that's even back then. I don't think that was the case. But maybe let's just say something lives in the ground, comes up out of it from inside because it's warmer, heals all kinds of commotion. Maybe it's like kind of like on Tremors.
Oh yeah,
where
yeah,
the
yeah.
vibrations alert whatever the hell is under the ground or under the rock, comes out and tries to swallow them whole or whatever, you know.
That's interesting. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of coming up with theories here.
Yeah, it's really weird. And so
let's go where you left off. They're busting out of their tent. They're hauling ass, trying to.
Yes, they are.
Left all their shit. They're in such a rush. The only thing they grabbed was the one guy grabbed his camera.
Exactly. So then that was enough for the volunteers to be like, okay, something's wrong. So they went.
So all their shit was still
down.
there.
Yeah.
Is that where the campfire was at too?
They found the campfire later on. I don't think they even noticed the campfire. They just noticed the tent.
Oh, okay.
And that was that. So then after that, they actually got the police and stuff involved. And they're like, that something's wrong. This is what we found. And so.
So they went up there, found it, and came back down and told the cops.
Yeah, and so then they went up there, and then after that, they did some searching.
And so how far up were they at this point? I'm assuming they didn't get as high as they wanted.
No, they did not. They
were they even halfway?
So it turned out, from what I read, it turned out that the way that they were trying to go, they were trying to end up at this place called Old Torton. So it's like a certain, I guess, part or area that they were trying to go
That's
to.
That's that Death Mountain, right?
Yeah. And so what happened was snowstorms hit, and this decreased their visibility, and it caused them to lose their sense of direction.
Well, I mean, blizzards.
Right.
Up the mountains.
So because of this, they were actually went...
Even with a compass?
Yeah, I guess it distorted what direction they were or something.
It makes you wonder, though. Something threw off the compass.
Could be.
The compass works off like the Earth's magnetic field or whatever. Something threw it off on purpose.
So instead of moving toward Otorton, they went west and found themselves on the slope of a mountain. So on the slope of the mountain that they were climbing on. So they went the opposite way of what they were supposed to go, or where they were trying to go.
So they're going in the wrong direction.
They're going in the wrong direction. So they're thinking wherever they set camp up at.
Right.
They were saying that the Dyatlov, the leader of the group, decided that maybe to try to gain back some of the altitude that they had lost, or simply maybe just wanted to practice camping on that mountain slope. That's where they ended up camping out at. So it could have been that he just said, well, we're already here. This is kind of like, kind of a hard, difficult terrain. This will be good for us to be able to it'll be good for our certification or whatever, so we can just stay here. Or maybe he thought we might as well just set up camp here and try to gain back.
Okay, so here's another question.
Okay.
They're doing all this for a certification.
Right.
Who's to verify that they were actually down there? Does this Dyatlov guy, was he part of he was actually just part of he was trying to get his certification too, but he was the leader?
He was the leader.
Okay, so who's the authority to make sure they did this? Who's to say these people didn't just go up and hide about a couple miles up in there, come back down in 2 weeks and say, "Oh, we did it." But I guess they needed
like photographic evidence.
But even then,
like
you could have took pictures of different shit and just faked it. Say, "Oh, this is when we were at this point. This is when we were at this point." It's all snowy anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I know this is kind of side story, but how the hell? I mean, why? I'm not saying to cheat to win, but you know what happens. Why do it? You could have just said, "Hey, we did it." No one would have known.
That's true.
Of course, in the communist days, only they're allowed to do the cheating. You know what I'm saying? So don't you dare.
Yeah, that's interesting to.
Something to think about too.
Yeah.
A little side story there.
So, their bodies actually weren't found until the 26th of February.
So over a month.
1959. Yes.
Over a month after the actual exploration started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it had been quite a while.
Now they are up in the mountains, so if they're dead and they're -2 degrees, I'm assuming you would think, unless some animal was eating them, that their bodies would be pretty well preserved. Like if they died from just freezing froze to death because it was so cold. And I'm sure it got colder to -2 at some point. It had to have.
Yeah, I'm sure it
because
did.
I've been up north and I was in -4, and it's pretty freaking cold. But that's here in the U.S. And I imagine in Russia it has to get way colder up in the mountains. So, you know, man, it's probably like -20, negative whatever.
So something to think about is like one of the things they also found when they found the tent originally was 8 or 9 set of footprints that were leading away from the tent that they had. And some of them, you could tell there were shoes, like they had
8 or
worn their
9
shoes.
different sets of footprints? Okay, but there was 9 people.
They had found
so
their
there should
shoes.
be 9 sets.
Some of them had found to be like actual like footprints, like shoe prints.
Well, some didn't have their shoes
But
on
some
if they were in such a rush.
Yeah, some didn't have their shoes. So some you could tell, had just left, which was really weird.
Right.
So when they didn't find all the bodies at once. They found them like little bits at a time. So they found the first 2 first, okay? And so
was this the man and the woman, or is this 2 dudes?
There were 2 men.
They found 2 guys. And there was
2
only 2 girls out of the group, right?
Yes, it was 2 girls and 8 guys.
7 guys, 2 girls?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first 2 that were found about maybe like...
And they're frozen. I mean, obviously the bodies are completely frozen.
They're all frozen.
I imagine they got some frostbite and stuff on them.
Right. So they were found at the forest edge under a large cedar. And they found the remains, along with a small fire. The remains of a small fire.
Okay, so that means they escaped.
Mm-hmm.
And these people at least were able to start a fire.
Yeah.
So how far away from the tent were they at this point, these 2?
I didn't...
they must have been pretty far.
It must have been, yeah. It didn't... I didn't read on that, but...
Damn, if he didn't have his shoes and frostbite all over his feet.
But yeah,
And so at this point, the group's completely split up.
Yeah.
They've all went different ways.
They've all gone in different directions, and so...
So they're running away from something.
Yes, so the first 2 bodies, 23-year-old and Yuri, and this Russian name is going to get me. Krivonishenko.
It's Yuri Krivonishenko.
23 years old, and then Yuri
Doroshenko,
21 years old. So they were really young. And they were found shoeless and wearing only underwear.
Dang, so they're borderline completely naked.
Yeah.
Now, real quick, I don't see them taking their clothes off even when they're in the tent. Because it's so cold.
No, I don't think so.
So something either ripped their clothes or they were burning their clothes because they had nothing else to burn the fire with, maybe?
Maybe. I don't know, but it's really weird. Then next they found 3 more bodies. Those of Dyatlov, Zenaida, and Kolmogorova. So, and then Slobodin as well.
So 4?
4. There were 4 bodies.
Now, one of these is bound to be a woman.
Yes, one of them was a woman. I think it was Zenaida. I think that was the woman. And they all died. But from the way their bodies were found, they were trying to go back to the camp. They were trying to go back to.
Now did they find them frozen down in the snow?
Yes, they were all. They were all frozen.
Were they facing downward, or what?
Some were facing up. But they're up, like facing up toward the sky, but then other ones were face down.
Were their eyes open?
Some of them did have their eyes open.
I seen the picture of the girl.
Yeah. It was weird. Okay,
and
so
her eyes are wide open. Well, I mean, she's dead. And her hands are like kind of reaching out in front of her, and her fingers are spread wide. Like either she's trying to claw something or she's trying to stop something. Basically, she looks like she died, and her last motion was that of fear in her face and her motion.
Well, it was weird. So, yeah.
I'm not going to upload that photo because it's kind of gruesome, but you guys can Google that.
So, it was really weird. So, when these bodies were found, some of them had hardly any clothes on.
Right.
But some of them had, like, a lot of clothes on.
Well, the women pictures that I seen, they looked like they were fully clothed.
So, what they're thinking happened was, as they were dying, the other ones that were trying to survive were taking the clothes off of the other ones.
Off the dead ones.
Putting them on to keep themselves warm.
That's possible. That's possible. And something else real quick. Maybe, I was just thinking, maybe there's some sort of, okay, this is on a mountain.
Right.
Sometimes mountains are volcanoes or whatever, and I'm not saying that's what this is.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's some sort of natural gas or something under the earth that's leaking. And they park their little tent there, and they get high or something on this chemical. Completely blitzes their mind, and they just kind of lose it for a little while. Before they can come off the high, they're all out and they're fucked. or these are a bunch of kids overall, early 20s. They do back in the 50s, probably trying to, I know this is Russia, or Soviet Union, did some sort of drug, some wacky tobacco, if you will.
Well, they
got a little too high for their own good, and maybe they got some bad stuff.
So that was.
And they all lost it, and this is all hallucinogenic.
So that's actually one of the theories that's been thrown out there, that they all maybe got high on some kind of drug, and
that was bad,
and they just like attacked each other. But the injuries that some of these people had were so severe, like they couldn't have inflicted that kind.
Here's something. We were in Soviet Union back in the 50s. Something that lives out in Soviet Union that's a wild beast. Now, Russia's known for their bears. Russian bear, okay, big old brown bear, grizzly bear, whatever. And Russia's also known for something else. Siberian tiger. Now, that's a beast. Huge. Now, I know they're not in Siberia, that part of Russia. And I know that nowadays there's not too many of them, but they're still in Siberia. Now, back in the 50s, a long time ago, so who's to say those tigers weren't more closer in the continent than they are nowadays?
That's true.
And they are used to living in very cold weather. More so probably than the bear, because I think the bear usually hibernates in the winter. Where else the Siberian tiger will come out. And I can see humans in the winter being an easy target for a Siberian tiger.
Right.
And we're talking about a massive beast. 700-800 pounds,
Yeah.
Probably 3.5 to 4 feet at the shoulder. 10 foot long from head to tail, maybe bigger. I mean, this is a massive cat in real life.
Yeah.
And I mean, this cat, the Siberian tiger is huge. It's bigger than a lion. It's a big old cat. Maybe it was out there, tore him up. You know what I'm saying?
That's possible.
I mean, they haven't said much about it. Probably because it's too far away from their natural region, even for back then. But, something to think about.
It's definitely something to think about. So, like I was saying, that as they were finding these bodies, they were like, what happened? Like, they just didn't, some of them were missing their eyes.
So what about the other ones real quick? How many more were left after that?
So they found the first 2, and then they found 3 more. And then it wasn't until 2 months later.
Wow, 2 more months had gone by?
So I think it was like May 2nd or something.
Now, I would assume it's getting warmer in Russia at this point. Even though they're warm, it's probably still pretty freaking cold.
So in May, they found...
But still cold enough in the mountains where the body wouldn't decompose.
Yeah. They found the remaining 4 that were there. So
describe what all was... Tell us about the injuries on these people, the variety.
So there were a couple that had skull fractures. They had skull fractures. They had trauma, blunt force trauma to their chests. One of them, one of the males, his chest had been compressed so much that his ribs actually spread apart. And
there was nothing laying on him, like a boulder or something?
But the weird thing is that there were no external injuries. These were internal injuries. So there was no physical trauma to their outside bodies.
So, okay, let's just say it's like something heavy landed on him and then moved off.
Yeah, basically.
So here's my theory. I'm just going to sound wild. We're up in the mountains, tons of snow. We're dealing with a Yeti.
That's what I was thinking.
We're dealing with a Yeti.
That's what I was thinking.
Massive beast, probably 10, 12 feet. I don't know.
That's what I was thinking,
1,200 pound, maybe more. Probably straight up just stepped on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Probably went.
Yeah.
And that could explain that. Because if there's no boulder or nothing, if a boulder fell on them, you would see the trail through the snow. I know it's been a while, but you would still see a boulder down below or nearby or something.
Yeah, you would. You definitely would.
Yeah, no human's going to be strong enough to do that. Unless they, like I said, get hit by a truck or something.
One of them did have a noticeable gash. But when he did have the skull fracture, and he did have a gash like on his head. But the other one that had another skull fracture, you didn't see any external.
Again, comes to my theory of the Yeti grabbing you by the head and just like a peanut.
Something else that was noticed also I think it was the first 2 bodies that were found initially. Their hands were like like shredded. Like they were like just bloody stumps that were there.
No fingers left?
No fingers. Like they had been mutilated, and they.
Did it look like okay? Now, did it look like something gnawed them off, or did it look like they just?
They kind of thought that initially, I think.
Like they were stuck. Let's say they were trapped and they're trying to dig their way out. Did they wear their fingers down to the bone?
So they did, but it was on trees. The trees nearby that had been found near had meat embedded in the bark.
From fingers and stuff?
From their hands, yeah.
And why were they were they scratching at trees?
I think
were they trying to climb the trees?
Yeah, they were trying to climb up really, really fast because they said that even up to 5 meters up, the branches were broken off and there was pieces of...
Up to 5 meters.
Yeah, up there.
That's about what? 15 feet?
Yeah. So they were trying to climb up, and I guess they couldn't stay up there, and I guess ended up falling back down. I don't know. But they found their meat from their hands.
So they got up a little bit.
So yeah, so they got up there, but it's like,
but why? If this thing is 10 foot tall, he'll just reach up and pull you down.
Then maybe that's what happened. Maybe that's why they didn't stay up there. I don't know, but it's weird that they would try so hard that they would just mutilate their hands.
Yeah.
To get up there.
But
what
also,
were they trying to run from?
Okay, but if they're already starting to get frostbite, they probably couldn't feel their extremities anymore.
Oh, that's true.
So when they're trying to do something, they're not realizing that they're literally breaking and tearing their own shit up.
Yeah, that's probably what happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it was still really weird. I mean, they, and even other ones, like I said, their eyes were missing. The tissue around their eyes was gone.
So it literally looks like a body that's still intact. But their face has no eyeballs. It's like they ripped the eyeballs clean out of the head.
Yeah.
And it looks like a skull, like from Mortal Kombat or something.
And it wasn't like...
and the face, some of the meat around the nose and like all around the face meat.
So one of them
had... gone.
So one of them, there was a few that had their eyes gone. And the ones that had their eyes gone, there was at least 2 that the tissue around their eyes was gone. Right? Mm-hmm. But then another one that had their eyes missing had their whole like... face tissue.
Yeah, like it was tearing its face. They were tearing their face off. Okay. Back to the wacky tobacco. That could be a symptom of someone being on a bad acid trip back in those days and scratching their own faces out until they. Well, I don't know how the hell they pull one. I guess someone could pull each other's eyes out, but.
But the thing is about that though, there was no. They didn't find any tissue of the other people on their fingers. So they didn't do it to each other. And the thing is, it wasn't messy. Like, it wasn't like animals had just done it and gouged it. I mean, it was clean. Like, it had been removed, like, perfectly. Like, it wasn't gouged.
The Yeti's got some sort of Hannibal Lecter thing going on? Rip the face off and maybe add it to his collection?
Well, we don't really know the intelligence of them, So who knows? Maybe they are really smart and they can do things like that.
We don't even know if it was a Yeti. I'm just throwing this out there because, what the hell could it have been up there?
And then another...
Tiger's not going to sit there and suck your eyeballs out. Yeah. He probably would have just went for your thighs or something and got some real meat. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I can see him eating your head, but he's not going to just eat an eyeball.
Exactly, that's true. So, I mean, it's really weird. And even, like, one of the females actually had her tongue removed. It was weird.
But her face was fine.
Perfectly.
So it cut out her tongue.
It just cut out her tongue.
See, this just seems like this is like just a fucking psycho out in the mountains, doing weird shit. But at the same time, what if this creature or Yeti is not as stupid as we all assume and is actually a thinking creature? But not only is he a Yeti or a creature, he's also a psycho. Mm-hmm. And to him, this is like a collection. You know what I mean?
That's definitely possible.
Takes it back for his reward. Oh, I got the tongue from a female. I got the eyes from this dude. I don't know. Maybe he preferred the tongue.
So, when they did the autopsies, I mean, they were like, they had such damage. I mean, the significant skull damage. One of them had suffered significant skull damage in the moments before his death. Mm-hmm. While one of the other females, I think her name was Dublinina, she was 20. And then Saman, who was 38, suffered chest fractures that could only have been caused by an immense force comparable to that of a car crash.
Right, like a heavy-ass Yeti stomped on you. Now, one of the females, I saw the photo, when she died, she was on her knees and she was like pressed up against a rock.
Yeah, like something had just like,
shoved her up
against it, yeah. And she was the one that had Her eyes removed, part of her lips were gone, her tongue was missing, she had
So,
facial tissue.
okay, so that one lost a tongue too.
And she had also had a fragment. There was a fragment of her skull bone or something. I think that was missing.
See,
also,
something was after their faces. Now, maybe the animal, that was the easiest part to get to if it was just an animal. Because the other parts were so covered in boots and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I just don't see it. I don't see it. It had to have been some sort of monster.
Now, this is
Yeti or something.
This gets even weirder because two of them, there was I think his name was Kolvatov, I think, and then Dublina, one of the females. They were found to be radioactive.
So, okay, this is where the shit goes crazy. I mean, the shit's already crazy, right? But, yeah. I mean, shit's hitting the fan at this point. Not only are these people dead in weird ways, with no actual explanation.
No explanation.
Way up in a fucking mountain in Soviet Russia, 1959. Freezing, below freezing. I mean, below zero.
Yeah.
Temperatures. And this is, it's cold as shit. And now 2 of these bodies are radioactive.
Yes, radioactive. And according to their families, when they did their funerals and they got to see their bodies, they said they emitted an orange glow from their skin and their hair was gray.
That definitely sounds like radiation.
And I'm like, they're like, why do they look like that? Like they were young.
Now we're into the realm of aliens. Was there an alien? Because I mean, it's a mountain. A lot of the Earth, even today, it's been what, 70 years since this incident or whatever. Well, let's say 60 years. We haven't explored all of this planet. I mean, prime example is the ocean. It's like, what, 70% of the ocean's unexplored. Who knows what the hell's under there?
Exactly.
There's bound to be mountains and caves that lead to another world under there, underneath the Earth. That's a whole nother episode. And we're going to get to that, trust me. But, like, another one's mountains. Especially the ones with all this snow and this really bad weather. You haven't been to all of those mountains, know?
Yeah, exactly.
And then who knows what's up in those mountains? What's underneath that snow? Maybe there is another race of alien species. So high tech they're able to bring their ships or whatever in through the snow because they know we're not going to really go there.
Right.
They have a gateway through the mountain and it opens up and the snow falls off. So maybe it was them, got out, or obviously this is not a friendly alien if that's the case. Did this kind of stuff just to be an asshole, or maybe he needed tongue and eyeballs and shit for his experiment, but he was just gruesome about it because he didn't give a fuck about how he was going to get it.
That's true.
Because this is the radiation. I've heard stories, when they get near these alien ships, sometimes they put off some sort of radiation and they leave radiation in the ground.
Exactly.
And now, again, maybe the Yeti was released by the aliens to go out and do some damage. And he had radiation on him. He's a radioactive creature, kind of like Godzilla or something,
Exactly.
Now, that's my little alien tidbit. But another thing could be back to some natural chemical or coming out of the mountain, what I was saying earlier. Maybe there was just something naturally radioactive in the ground there. And 2 of them happened to catch it.
That's definitely possible.
And they just coincidentally caught it, and the radiation just made them fucking lose it, all of them. But the only ones that really had the signs were those 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely,
now, something else, of course, it's the Soviet Union. How do we know they didn't send their own people up there, troops or scientists or whatever, do some kind of crazy shit to these people, some kind of experiment? It was really just an experiment. These people thought they were going on an adventure or whatever, but really, those powers that be had other plans. They were really going to go test something out on them. That could explain the radiation.
That's true.
I really don't think that's the logical answer, though, because I just don't see them caring enough to go up there. If they wanted to do something to people, they probably would have just done it right then and there, wherever they want, on their turf. They're not going to make things hard for them. So I'm still leaning toward some sort of Yeti creature that would do this. Maybe he puts off some sort of radiation poisoning. I don't know. the radiation thing really throws everything out of whack, because if it was a Yeti that had this radiation, why didn't everybody else get the radiation?
What throws me off is how severe their injuries were. I mean,
And how
there was
different, too.
there was no signs of like a struggle. Like, they were all found in certain areas, and they were so severely, their injuries were so severe, but there was no struggle. Like, if they were like actually rolling around fighting with somebody
Outside of their fingers and stuff.
yeah,
being
outside of their
jacked up,
yeah, that's it. And like their faces, and but their injuries are so severe. I mean, you think there would have been a lot more like of a scene if
Yeah, more damage around.
more damage.
And there wasn't much blood loss from the photos.
There was no blood. Like, there was.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe like around their faces. Like,
Well,
they had injuries,
I kind of get it when they're cutting up in their face and it's fucking negative 20 degrees. There's probably not a whole lot of things floating around blood-wise. You're probably freezing up.
You'd think you'd still see, even if it was frozen, you'd still see something. But if you look at the pictures, like,
there's very little.
There's very little.
Yeah.
Like, it's just really weird. It almost reminds me of, and this is going off topic, but this reminds me almost like when ranchers talk about, their animals that get attacked during the night, and they're completely drained of blood. Like
chupacabra.
But the body itself is fine.
So you thinking this is some sort of like an ice chupacabra?
Something, yeah, like, that it can perfectly, remove things from the body.
Because the chupacabra, first off, I know for a fact, me and you have never heard of it being out in the cold temperatures.
Yeah.
It's always warmer environments,
temperatures,
mostly
right.
in the Latin America,
Uh-huh.
but even the U.S. too. Southern states. I never heard about it up north or Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely, yeah, but a lot of times it leaves those two bite marks, like fangs or something, and it drains the blood, but the body's whole.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like I do remember it, or at least not so much about the chupacabra, but like on these farms where they say where the farmer's theory is like alien does something to these cows.
Yeah.
And like it'll have like where the face is cut off and the body's there, or like the udders are cut off. I say udders.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And like, but the body's still intact.
And there's like no blood, you can never tell anything had occurred.
Yeah,
it's just
but the
gone.
blood is gone.
Yeah.
And these people still had blood in their body, I'm assuming, because they didn't say
they still had blood in their bodies and everything, but I'm saying like outwardly for these injuries to have occurred.
So I'm going to say this was not an ice chupacabra. I'm going to say it's something to do with a possible Yeti or some sort of alien species that was not very friendly, because that's how the radiation's coming into play. Unless it was coincidental, the radiation was a natural phenomenon. But then why didn't they detect radiation? Okay, when did they detect the radiation? When they got there, or when they brought the bodies back? Because you think, I'm assuming people have gone back to that area.
They've gone back.
They've had to have a Geiger counter with them. If the ground was radioactive, the Geiger counter would go off, and you would know this.
They've gone back since then. People have gone hiking up there,
and there's been no radiation.
No radiation. There've been no issues.
So that throws the radioactive ground out of the theory. Then
I think whatever attacked them
was radioactive. But then why weren't the others? Did it have a power where it could only summon or do the radioactive when it wanted to, like almost like a fireball or something, not a fireball, but like an energy ball?
Well, I think they all came in contact with radiation, except I think those two that were specifically like they found to be radioactive, I think were the ones that had been, I guess, like subjected to it the most.
Right.
But I think they all had a form of radiation, because their skin like glowed, like when they were
even the others. I thought you said it was just the two.
The two that I read about
were glowing orange.
They had specifically said in the reports that I read that they were found to be radioactive. Like, I guess right when they found the bodies, they could tell they were like.
And they had an orange glow.
They had an orange glow, but then other families reported from other people that had died that their skin was like an orangey color, and that their hair was gray. So I think they all came in.
So
they were all like that.
Okay, so.
But the two that I guess they had found when they were up in the mountain,
right.
They specifically said they had higher levels, way higher levels than
so
the other ones, which is really weird.
So how long did this, I don't know, investigation take place? How long before they just said, fuck it, we don't know what caused it? Or did they come to a conclusion?
Well, they came up with it, actually. They did the autopsies pretty quick. They took them down, did the autopsies, and right away, they concluded that they had all died of hypothermia.
Even
though they froze to death, basically. You get too cold.
So, okay, if that's the case, they froze to death, animal comes up and nibbles on them or whatever. But coincidentally, only their faces, only their tongues, and not all of them, just some of them, yet they're radioactive.
But yet they had skull fractures and they had chest fractures. They had...
Well, especially the one where his bones and his ribs had separated.
Yeah, his ribs had separated. There was no outward injuries.
Something super heavy.
But something...
had to have hit him or stepped on him.
It was severe, like, force that...
And see, hypothermia doesn't explain ripping out the tent and getting the hell out of there.
Exactly. So they were saying that some of the things that they had come up with, they can only make sense up to a certain point, and then everything just kind of falls apart. So they said, first of all, they said that everybody had died from hypothermia.
Mm-hmm.
They were saying that because they were suffering from hypothermia, that the reason that, like, originally why some of the bodies were pretty much naked, but they were just in underwear, basically.
Right.
That they had suffered from what they called paradoxal undressing, and they say that's basically like when you're really, really cold, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some people, when they suffer from extreme cold, they appear to feel hot, almost like they're burning from the inside, and so they felt like they were burning, and so they took their clothes off. But then I think, come to find out, when they found the other bodies, they were like, no, that can't be it, because the other bodies were found wearing other people's clothes.
Right.
So obviously that wasn't one of the issues. But they were coming up with all these different issues. They were coming up with maybe it was an avalanche, and that's why they hurried out of the tent. But that doesn't make any sense because there was no evidence of any avalanche ever occurring.
Yeah, and you said the tent did have snow, but it wasn't completely buried.
No, it wasn't, no. And that would not explain the severe injuries that were found. Even an avalanche is not consistent with...
Well, yeah, it's not going to surgically remove your tongue and all this other shit.
So that's out. And then they were saying that, well, that's pretty much what they were saying. And they really they weren't coming up with really anything else. It could have been avalanche, hypothermia. For the longest time, they said hypothermia is what killed them. So
case closed, in their opinion, was hypothermia.
It was hypothermia.
And they were just going to look over the fact that they were radioactive and a bunch of other weird shit.
Yeah, they were just like, case closed, hypothermia, move on. Like they never looked into it. They shut it down real quick. That was it. To me, that makes me think they know more of what really occurred there.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Maybe they were behind it.
I mean, it could be.
A lot of times when somebody's behind something, they want to get it done with and shut up quick afterwards.
And that's what pretty much happened here.
Right.
They did the autopsies and they were like, oh, hypothermia.
Also could have been that they knew about the Yeti, or they knew that there's some sort of alien species living in that mountain. My thing is, you said many people since the 50s have went back up there, and this shit has never happened again.
Yep.
Now, so that throws out if the alien or whoever was still there, to think they would have happened again in 60 years, but nothing's happened.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder if someone was following them.
That's possible. I mean...
But then again, a human doesn't have the power to do what they did. I mean, to crush that guy no one's that heavy. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. I don't know. It's definitely weird. I know recently they reopened the case.
So in 2019, Russia decided to reinvestigate.
Mm-hmm. They opened the case back up. But again, they report, from what I read, that it was the cause of an avalanche. That it caused them to run out of their tent, and why they were found in the locations that they were found at.
That's what they're saying in 2019. They're still sticking with it.
They're sticking with it was an avalanche. Like, no, it was an avalanche that caused.
No one's buying that shit.
Like, no, there's no evidence of an avalanche. There was no evidence.
Right.
There's certain characteristics that you'd be able to see in the ground.
Right.
If an avalanche had occurred.
Well.
So, I mean,
especially when you're doing an investigation in 2019 for something that happened in 1959, you're basically going by whatever was written back then, right?
Yeah.
The records.
So,
60 years later.
In February 2019, Russian authorities reopened the investigation into the incident, although only 3 possible explanations were being considered: an avalanche, a snow slab avalanche, or a hurricane.
A hurricane in the middle of Russia?
Yeah, that's what.
Nowhere near an ocean.
No.
Oh boy.
So it's like, okay. Then they announced, okay, no, the avalanche is to be the official cause of death for the Dyatlov group in 1959. So that's it. It's an avalanche. That's what they declared it as.
Well, it's probably because they don't know what the fuck happened either. And they just want to say, fuck it, man, we don't know. Case closed. Plus, 60 years later, I mean, sad but true, most of their family members are probably all gone now. The only one that knew them were probably very old or were very young at the time and didn't really know them well. So the sad reality of the world is, as time goes on, you're eventually forgotten. I mean, unless you were like some, big historical figure, Abe Lincoln or something. But even then, you only know what's written. No one knows how he really was anymore in person.
I wonder if they had been, yeah.
So when you're an everyday person like us, normal folk, a generation later, you're not even a memory. It's almost as if we never existed.
That's true.
Sad reality.
Yeah, that is sad. I always wondered, though, if they had opened this investigation up earlier, if they could have, like, dug them up and, like, done a new autopsy
you mean exhumed
on
the
them.
bodies?
Yeah, exhumed the bodies.
Like back when maybe in the 60s or something.
Yeah, and, like, looked into it further.
Technology probably wasn't there, though, Maury.
Maybe not.
Especially in Soviet Russia. I mean, like I said, just the condition of the country. They had other shit they wanted to do.
Yeah.
They weren't worried about what the fuck happened to 9 people. Which, it's sad to say, but that's probably what they were doing. No, even if it was in the U.S., the tech wasn't there. They wouldn't have pulled them up a decade later. They still would have known what the fuck happened.
That's true.
I mean, they can't figure shit out these days. I mean, they probably could. They don't want to, but, who knows?
Yeah. So, yeah, I thought it was a really interesting case.
It's definitely a mystery. Because, I mean, it's weird. It's almost like a crime, but a mystery. It's more of a mystery, but it could be a crime at the same time. Because, was this a human that did it? If it's a human that did it, then it's a crime. Right? But we don't know if a human did it. And if you think logically, a human didn't do this. This was some sort of supernatural phenomenon or some sort of creature. And at the end of the day, this is just a mystery. No one really knows.
That's true. That's all you can say, really. I mean, any way you try to think about it and think of a cause, it doesn't match with everything that's
nothing
provided,
adds up.
Nothing
adds up.
So I don't know, but whatever it was, it was obviously enough that they were trying to.
And there was nothing written in these diaries that would lead to any kind of worry or mystery.
No, all the ones that were.
So it was just her diarying her days.
It was stuff in the diary that was found. It was literally just like documenting their trip and
their travels.
Everything was going good, and then that was it. That's February 1st was the last time anything was put in there, and that was it. So, yeah.
Wow.
I don't know.
So she obviously didn't. Well, they said they only took the camera.
They left the tent.
It's a shame though that back then, nowadays even back in the 80s, cameras would have the date on the photo when you snapped it.
Yeah.
Now I know nowadays it's all digital, but it'll still have that date digitally on there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame it wasn't at least like it was in the 80s when he snapped the photo. The date wasn't embedded on the film.
That would have been interesting
because
to
then
know.
You could have seen when he took that last photo of that blurry image.
And the date. That would have.
But also, why was that last image so blurry? Radiation could have, interfered.
That's true.
But the one picture that he took of that being or beast off in a distance, he was far enough away where if there was radiation coming off of it, it didn't affect the film. Which I will put that picture in the.
Or he could have taken it.
Slide there.
It could have taken it from him as he was taking the picture. Maybe it messed up the camera and.
Maybe that's what caused it. That one that was blurry.
Mm-hmm. That last picture.
Could have been, because they found the camera near his body, or where did they find the camera? Again?
They didn't specify where they found it, but that was one of the items that was found, and.
But it wasn't at the tent.
But it wasn't at the tent because all their supplies, their food, everything was found in the tent.
And let me ask you something. They went up there with no weapons. Well, I guess in
I
a
don't know.
communist country, you're not allowed to
I
protect
guess
yourself.
not. They didn't say anything about having them having any kind of.
They disarmed their citizens like the first thing these kind of people do.
So
I guess he probably could have had a knife, but what the hell is that going to do against a Yeti? You know?
yeah.
Yeah. Good luck.
But I mean, whatever it was, it was something that they were scared of, they were terrified of. But at the same time, I think they wanted to document. They wanted to take a picture of whatever this thing was.
Well, it's a damn shame they didn't get a clear photo of it because you could have seen at least what it was. I mean, but there's definitely something in that one photo that looks. Of course, in the picture, it looks dark. So this Yeti, when I think Yeti, I think of like a white Bigfoot, like a white-haired Bigfoot.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the one you saw in a Rudolph when we were kids.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But in this picture, it's dark. So this Sasquatch-looking creature, it's brown or black. I don't know.
See, things
because it doesn't blend in too well with the environment.
Stories like this
could have came out of a hole in the mountain, you know.
Yeah. Stories like these are what fascinate me. Just like the unknown, like you're trying to figure out, like what could this be? What could have caused this?
Yeah, I mean, it's been 60 years. No one's gotten a straight answer, and this is one of those things that no one will ever know.
No, we'll never know.
Because 60 years has already gone by. All the original investigators, the original team, they're all gone from time. You know?
Yeah.
All that's left is the information that they left us.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a relative that was younger back then. And maybe someone that was of age, but they're very old.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
definitely.
Very old. And if they're that old, their memory's not going to be too great where they can remember shit like they was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think, guys? What do you think could have caused this? What could have injured these people so severely? And it's just something.
Was it a Yeti? Aliens? Humans?
Person, maybe?
Yeah, their own government? I don't know. Yeah, did they turn on one another? Who knows? But definitely freaky shit because they all died weird.
Yeah, they did.
They didn't die the same way.
They all died in very weird circumstances. They didn't have all the same injuries. Weird. And they all died at different times as well.
Different areas.
So, yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
It's creepy. Really creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder all the other mountains and shit that... Well, like Mount Everest. There's all kinds of dead people there, but that's just because they simply died because of the elements.
Yes.
And there's nothing weird that's happened to them.
Yeah, they just,
Yeah, there's no freaky shit
they just died, and it's too treacherous to get them off, so they're
just
there.
Leave them. Yeah. Kind of going off topic, they're to this day, there's people going up that mountain, and there's bodies that they use as markers, from what I hear.
They do, yeah. They use that. Okay, we're at this point because this person's here.
Because this dude with the blue, with the 1980s orange members only frozen jacket or whatever, and these guys have been there since like 87, dead.
Yeah.
Frozen in time.
Yeah, and it's
still dressed in 80s frozen, winter wear.
And it's just because it's so dangerous to get them off that they just,
They just said there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, and you know what? With this Russian mountain situation, there's probably some evidence still up there to this day that they missed.
Oh yeah, I believe that.
I bet you if they really wanted to and went back up there,
they'd still find
something. They'd still find something.
Oh yeah.
Because there's no way they found everything, especially if the weather was that bad. I mean, even I don't care if it's 60 years. People still find remnants from the Civil War to this day, out in fields and shit.
Yeah.
There's something up there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's still some evidence.
And who knows? Maybe it'll come up at some point. Maybe somebody will find something, and it'll
But then again, maybe the Russian government has a file they've never released.
I believe that too.
And they never released. Will it ever be released? Probably not. But you never know.
In my opinion, I think that they know something. I think it was an open and shut case, like really fast. They're like, oh no, hypothermia. They all died of hypothermia, even though they had all these severe injuries. That's not what they died of.
Definitely could be. Definitely could be. I'm gonna stick to my theory of they just didn't give a fuck. So open and shut case because small potatoes in Russia. You know what I'm saying? They got bigger things to do.
I guess that could be it too.
All right, folks. Next episode, not sure when, not sure what about, but definitely will be something interesting. This is actually We started recording this on a Sunday night. It's now early Monday morning. And we're taking it easy. So appreciate you lounging and listening to us rant and chat. And we will see you next time.
Bye.